Motherhood is still much harder than it needs to be. In some ways, it has become even harder. I believe it's high time for that to change. In her classic study of Woman Born, Adrienne Rich distinguished between motherhood as an experience and motherhood as an institution, what it's like intrinsically to be a mother, and how motherhood is managed in society. Let's take motherhood as an experience first of all. It is a state that is idealized everywhere in our culture and media. Even if you manage to find an article about one of the darker aspects, it will invariably be accompanied by a shot of the mum laughing with her brood. Try it as an experiment. As a culture, we just can't help it. Shortly after the birth of her first baby, Zoe Williams gave an interview to Vogue. She revealed that she'd had an emergency caesarean and then nasty complications which left her bedridden for 6 weeks. And that was just the start. Sometimes I get really down and feel like, man, I can't do this, she said. No one talks about the low moments, the pressure you feel, the incredible letdown every time you hear the baby cry. I've broken down I don't know how many times. Or I'll get angry about the crying, then sad about being angry, and then guilty, like, why do I feel so sad when I have a beautiful baby? The emotions are insane. Yet there she was on the front cover, a glowing image of happiness and fulfillment. Though motherhood can be a delight, at times it is frustrating and infuriating. Being with children pushes you to the limits of what you can handle. It presses your buttons and stress tests your temper. For me, it is the best of times, the worst of times, and, at least in the early years, sometimes just quite dull. But, and here we turn to motherhood as an institution, society does not like to acknowledge this mixed, ambivalent reality. And that makes the whole business even more difficult, because mothers are made to feel that they alone are struggling, that they should be finding it easy and instinctual, and are therefore failing, and that there is little rationale for support. The way motherhood is organised today is an outrage that would be clearly visible if we didn't think it was the job of individual mothers to hold it all together. Motherhood as an institution currently involves women being frightened into settling down with the wrong man because they're worried they will soon be infertile and left on the shelf. Once pregnant, being policed into renouncing pleasures that keep them sane, and in childbirth, suffering traumatic and life-changing injuries. After birth, they are left to cope alone and slide towards depression. Childcare is a headache that can last 15 years. The gender pay gap is actually a motherhood pay gap, and they eventually give up the prospect of either achieving life goals or attaining equality with men, either work colleagues or partners. I'm not talking about all mothers, of course, but quite a number of these experiences will be familiar to a disgracefully high proportion. Yet the dominant mood of many mothers is not indignation, but guilt. I felt guilty when I ate a brie sandwich while pregnant. I felt guilty when I had an epidural for my first baby and an elective caesarean for my second. I felt guilty when I had my 6-week-old baby looked after for 6 hours a week while I wrote a book. I feel guilty when I sneak off for a quick scroll through Twitter when my children are at home, or peek at the paper while they're trying to tell me something detailed about Lego cards. And most of all, I feel guilty when I lose my temper. The problem is not the children. The children are great. They can't help being too young to control their emotions, trade opinions on the day's news, or do the washing up. The problem is the context. Too often, the discontent that mothers feel is not directed at society, but at themselves. Modern mothers feel they must be not just good enough, but perfect, and that any misstep will lead to dire consequences for their child. Yet this is a misperception that leads to real harm. Feminism has enjoyed something of a moment in the past few years. #MeToo has achieved public prominence, if not substantial real-world change. Yet there is something awry in the way the media tends to gravitate towards varieties of feminism that concern sex. Where is the #MeToo for mothers? Millennial women